Hi, I'm Helena. So today we're going to talk about Tannhäuser, which is the second part of our Wagnerian series. So, another Requiem, another good day. So, Tannhäuser is the second opera out of 3, and it's the one that saved Richard Wagner's life. At least according to that Richard Burton movie about Wagner, which is like 8 hours long, and I sat through it, honestly. Like in one sitting, which is really weird. Anyway, basically there was like the democratic revolution or the German Revolution in 1848, 1849. And Wagner was a big part of it. So he was a communist personally, but he disguised this as being democratic. Because he said if everyone had the same money, this would be democratic. I don't know. Something like this. It's really weird, like looking at it from today's perspective, because he was obviously a communist. But never mind. So he was in this revolution, and he was found by soldiers and stuff. And their leader said, "Oh, you're Richard Wagner. I watched Tannhäuser last evening, and it was absolutely brilliant. You have 1 hour to leave the city and go into exile, and after this I will catch you and I will kill you, most certainly." So Wagner did that. Wagner fled the city without his wife, who didn't want to come with him, by the way. And this is when he fled into exile, but this was after Tannhäuser, but Tannhäuser saved his life. All of his friends died a horrible death and were probably executed in some way or another, but he was able to flee because of the brilliance of Tannhäuser. There are a few versions of Tannhäuser, because there was like the German version and the French version of it. I don't really know what I'm always watching. I think I'm normally watching like the French version or something. So this is not at all on this. Anyway, I'm just going to tell you what I know, and you can probably look it up. This is so weird. There's like this one part of my hair that's not going there, and I always have to like... Anyway. So, this is the greatest conflict of religions that you can possibly have. And no, to my old music teacher, it's not part of the ring. Still not part of the ring. Why would it be part of the ring? It's completely different religions. The ring is Germanic, and this is between Catholicism and like Roman. So never mind. So Tannhäuser, basically, he is a musical genius. I think he originally played the harp, which of course is never on stage because, you know, European productions. But Tannhäuser is a musical genius, but he's misunderstood, as so many geniuses are, because he's not typical. The typical at the time, this is the Middle Ages obviously, so the typical thing at the time was that you were in love as a guy with a married woman, and you were drooling over her from afar basically, and then they had, I don't know, they had fights over who had the best love song, which was not really a love song, because it's called Minnegesang in Germany. It's your German word of the day, which you will probably need in every single situation you encounter in Germany. So this kind of love was accepted. He was not that kind of guy. So he was, so to say, very modern. He didn't fit in. And he had a girlfriend back there whose name was Elisabeth. And this is the first of 3 E-roles. There are 3 girls with names E. Elizabeth, Elsa, and Ava. So these are the 3 women I do not like, because they're... I don't want to say weak, because they are just products of their time. probably today you would call them weak. But they were just these kind of light sopranos who always did what their guys wanted and stuff like that. We will have an excellent example next week with Elsa. Woohoo! So, Elisabeth, he had this girlfriend, but he left her because he felt vastly misunderstood, and he like kind of randomly went through nature and was, by the way, this is all pre-story, and was found by fairies and mythical creatures, and they got him to a mountain which is called Venus's Mountain, because you guessed it, Venus is in there, and he becomes Venus's personal musician and also lover for the next 7 years. And it's basically all that you would think of Roman festivities. It's great, it's lavish, it's all love, it's all also physical love, very much. There's not so much like a platonic connection between all the, but it's mostly physical. And they love each other, obviously. And they're very much happy, at least like from Venus's side, because she has been in this lavish lifestyle for thousands of years, and she's good with it. And she's one of the few mezzosopranos, by the way, who does not die. Mary also doesn't die, by the way, but anyway. So, Venus and Tannhäuser have this great life from probably today's perspective, but after 7 years, Tannhäuser is through. He's like, this is too perfect, you're too perfect, I cannot do this anymore, I have to go back. So he kind of, again, he still doesn't fit in. He's so much, I would also almost say Gemini-like. I'm gonna say it, I'm a Gemini. Richard Wagner was a Gemini. It's so Gemini-like. If you're, I know I out myself as like an astrology person, which I'm not so much, but I know my sign, I know Wagner's sign, and this kind of being torn between two worlds, which I, as a musical / opera lover, I understand this. Anyway, Tannhäuser is really torn between that, but he has this perfect life. But if you have perfection too long, then he doesn't want this anymore. And so and this is, now we're getting into the opera, they fight for a really long time, and he always has this beautiful music that he plays, and obviously she's really entranced by that, and so on and so forth. But ultimately he leaves her by saying, my savior is Maria. And then the whole world, the whole Roman world crumbles, and they all vanish, and he's left all alone, back in nature. And he goes back to his peers, who are like, oh, Tannhäuser, you're back, you're great, wonderful, wow, great. We have this kind of singing competition today. Would you like to compete? Because it's also, I don't know whether I remember this correctly, the production I saw last was very, very different from the book. I think it's also about like Elizabeth's hand in marriage, but I'm not sure. Could be also that's just like a singing competition. If it was, then like probably Elizabeth's father could compete with Darlan for Father of the Year, but I'm not sure again. So this was kind of the first act. He's reconciled with his old mates, and it's great, wonderful, cool. And now we get into the second act, which is this great competition in the castle. It's called Tannhäuser oder der Sängerkrieg auf Wartburg. which is kind of Tannhäuser, or the war of the singers on Wartburg, which is a castle. So they sing, and it's like the usual story. There are all these older men who sing of a platonic love, who sing of this kind of middle-aged love, which is impossible, almost. And it's purely mental, and it's purely one-sided. And as I said, just like this knight love, kind of like knights in a tournament who would like have the queen's handkerchief to bring them luck, but they never could have this woman, obviously. So these are all the other singers, but Tannhäuser, because Tannhäuser now has lived with the goddess of lust, and obviously he has a completely different perception of what love is. So he always intervenes kind of with this kind of, yeah, love is the best if you're with a woman, and it's great, and it's cool, and it's wow, and it wow. And they're all like, that's not love. That's no. And then this gets heated and heated and heated and heated. And then suddenly Tannhäuser sings the same song that he sang for Venus in Act 1. And he sings to her and says, Venus, you're the only one. I should have never left you. You're great. You're my heroine. You're the woman for me. And they were like, what? He was with Venus? What? No, never mind. He was with a woman? No. This is not how this works. This is not love. This is... No, we're not dealing with that. And they kind of want to kill him, respectively. And Elisabeth goes into the middle and says, no, you're not gonna touch him because I still love him. And my love will save him, as it always is, come on. And then, yeah, well, Tannhäuser is kind of devastated with this. And he says, what can I do to get back into your grace, to get back in God's grace? As I said, really weird for someone who's not Christian. What can I do to get back in God's graces? And they say, go to Rome and ask the Pope. And by go, I mean walk. So walk to Rome, ask the Pope, and then, as I said, he will tell you if you can do something and what you can do to get back from this. So this is the second act. And the third act is like all the pilgrims coming back from Rome, and amongst them is Tannhäuser, and he's really devastated because the Pope said to him, only when my, I don't know, stick, this thing, begins to bloom, then you will be pure again, free again, washed again, whatever the Christians say about this. So this is obviously probably not possible, and Tannhäuser knows that very, very well, and he's completely devastated. By the way, Elisabeth also, like, she's also devastated, and she died before. She died off stage, but she wasn't on stage in the beginning of the third act, but then she went and she died. Anyway, then Tannhäuser is really, 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 really down at this point, obviously, because there's no way he can be saved in a Christian society, and no way that he can go back to this Christian society because he's not pure anymore or something. And then Venus comes, and it's his most vulnerable moment that he could possibly have. And she comes and she says, come back with me. I'm here for you. I'm your girl. Come on. Let's go back to me. You can leave all this shit behind. This is your world now. And he says, okay, good. There's nothing for me to live anymore, but you. I can only go to you. This is the only way possible that I can still have a fulfilled life. And a friend of his says, no, you're not going to do that. I'm going to tell you the name of your savior now, and it is Elisabeth. And again, Venus vanishes because she has nothing better to do than to vanish. And Tannhäuser's like, okay, good. I'm as good as through, and he dies as well. And then the pilgrims start coming, and obviously I think Tannhäuser has also seen Elisabeth's body. I'm gonna tell you the story that I have with this opera specifically after this. And then the pilgrims are coming and say, oh, by the way, we just saw it in Rome. And by just, I don't know what they mean by just, because it's in Germany, obviously. The stick of the Pope began to bloom. So now, after his death, after everything that he went through, he is purified again, also through the death of Elisabeth. And this is a really recurring pattern of Wagner, that death is what sets you free. And I'm going to be very, very careful with this, obviously, because we don't know whether this is what it is in real life. I mean, could be that after we die, then we're all great and we're all good. But it could also be that we're like in the Greek afterworld, and we're in asphodel, where we're like standing around for all of our lives. Deaths. So we don't know what that is, but it's with Wagner, it's a recurring pattern that all the stuff, the horrible stuff that you had in your life, you're freed by death. And death is good, death is wonderful, and then you're free and you're glorified and whatever. And you might have noticed this, but after the Flying Dutchman, this is the second one where the main couple, which was the Dutchman and center in the Flying Dutchman, and now, which is Elisabeth and Tannhäuser, they die, more or less together. And now they're free. The Hollander, the Dutchman's freed by his curse. Center's freed, I don't know, from her father. She basically died for the Dutchman. Same goes for Elisabeth. And Tannhäuser is also freed by this curse from being with Venus or something. So, this is a recurring pattern. We will have this again. When will we have this again? I think in 2 weeks. We will have this quite a lot. Honestly, we'll all also have this like in the 10th week. Parsifal. There are a few deaths that are still coming up. I think the Ring is about 28 persons out of 33 who die. So we're having a lot of death coming up. This is something Wagner's kind of famous for. But now comes my story with Tannhäuser, and this is, you may have noticed this, especially if you have watched like The Dutchman. I'm not so well versed in Tannhäuser because, again, I like the mezzo-soprano more, and I think the second act is, it's kind of boring. Oh god, my glass is fogged up. Anyway, this is so, it's the second act is kind of boring because it's just the contest and stuff. I'm so sorry, and this is like the one that I'm the least versed with or about or whatever. Even though I really love Venus, but I do not like Elisabeth, and Venus is only like in the first half of the first act, and then this short like cameo almost in the third act. And this is what I mostly watch because, as I said, I kind of think the second act is a bit boring because it's so Christian and so Catholic, and I am not. So this is why I don't know so much about this one. Also, I've only seen it once live on stage. This was last year, and how shall I put this? The production was completely different than the book. Completely. And I'm gonna tell it to you like after this. The other thing was that I have been in the complete ring before Tannhäuser. So I have been 5 times to Bayreuth last year. I've been in the complete ring. Tannhäuser was the last thing. And I was sick. I was really, really, really sick because there was all this AC and stuff, which I'm not used to. Hardly anyone in Europe is used to like the AC that the Americans have. I'm not used to this, and immediately, as I said in like one of the other videos, immediately my neck, or like my tones and something were closed, and I was getting like sicker and sicker and sicker and sicker. And in Tannhäuser I was almost like dead, and I really got through the first and second act very good. And then came the third act, and I felt like I had a coughing fit. It was really, really horrible, and I could hardly concentrate on anything. And what I thought was, I'm just gonna go out, cough a little bit, and then come back in. This was not what happened, because if I knew what was gonna happen, I would have stayed, and I would have coughed my soul out. But I unfortunately wanted to be the nice person and went out. Stupid, because they didn't let me in again. And as I said, this third act had just started, so the last time I saw it, Elisabeth was still alive, which is why like my knowledge of the third act is not so good. And I had to stay outside. So I was like on the balcony, and from outside you could still hear it, because they said such a great acoustic, you know it all. I could still hear it, but I wasn't allowed to stay up there, so I had to go downstairs. And I had to wait the whole time of the third act till my mom got out and we could like go to our bus and go home. And I was really, really, really miserable. And yes, as I said, this was unfortunately the last time this particular production was on stage. And I'm really quite sad to not having been able to see the whole thing. So this is my kind of complicated story with Tannhäuser. So this is the one I've got here. I have the one that I saw last year on DVD as well, but not unfortunately with the Tannhäuser I wanted, because the first Tannhäuser unfortunately died 1.5 years ago. So I've got him on DVD, but not the Tannhäuser I had last year, who I'm a great fan of, Klaus Florian Vogt. Love him. One of my favorite, or the favorite tenor who's currently on stage for me, and I couldn't see him and the rest. This really breaks my heart. Anyway, I wasn't mentally able to watch the DVD, so I cannot tell you how like this production specifically got to an end, but I'm gonna tell you now what this thing, or what the production was about, because it was so good. So basically, it was not at all this stuff that I told you before about. It was not the Middle Ages anymore, it was today. So basically, all the singers were Wagnerian singers in Bayreuth. Not kidding you. They basically had a miniature of the Bayreuth festival house on stage. And this, I think it's also on YouTube, by the way. Anyway, my voice is giving out, so I have to take care of it. And I want to go singing tomorrow. And I'm just currently crushing all of these hopes. Anyway, this production in Bayreuth was, as I said, that the singers were all Wagnerian singers in Bayreuth. And Venus was kind of this activist who was I'm not gonna say any political direction. Anyway, she was against all this, like the high persons are going to Bayreuth and stuff. And at one point Tannhäuser was completely done with Bayreuth and with the Wagnerians, even though he was the first tenor and something. And he went away with Venus and her crew, which was, God, this is the worst thing if you have like something you probably are not allowed to say in another language and you know it. So have like a dwarf-like person, I hope I'm saying this right, and a drag queen, basically. Le Gâteau Chocolat, I think was her name. So these four people, Venus, Le Gâteau Chocolat, the dwarf, and Tannhäuser, were just randomly driving with a VW through the country and, I don't know, doing activism. And then there was one point which was shown in the Overture when Venus like killed a policeman by driving over him, and Tannhäuser was like, no, I'm not doing this anymore. And he left the group and he went back to Bayreuth to his peers, who immediately were like, oh yeah, great, you're here. Just because you didn't sing for 7 years doesn't mean we won't take you in again. And you can go on stage immediately because we have this production. So this was the first act, and this was also where like the miniature Bayreuth Opera House was on stage. And it went out with Venus and the Dwarf and Le Gâteau Chocolat going up the hill, which is not in the original production. Venus does not appear in the second act in the original production. So the second act was, it is part video and part on stage. So you had this video of behind the stage of what was happening currently. Literally, like they had cameras on stage and filmed the actors or the singers while they were going on stage, and what happened behind the stage, which was so cool. And I'm so mad at myself for missing the third act. Anyway, so basically the second act was they are now on stage and they're having this like middle-aged production of the Singers' War, and they were all in those clothes, those middle-aged clothes. And Venus was basically shown per video how she got like a ladder and climbed into the Bayreuth Festival House, and how she broke to the backstage basically, and she got a costume for herself and a wig, and then stumbled on stage kind of as part of the choir. And obviously everyone knew that it was not the proper choir girl. And this was really fun. So immediately when the breakout or the fallout was that Tannhäuser said, oh Venus, I love you so much, you're so great, wonderful. Venus would like strip on stage and have underneath this like middle-aged dress, she had her clothes from the first act, and she went to Tannhäuser and they like kissed, and they were all, and everyone else was like, what does this activist do on stage, this is so weird. And then Le Gâteau Chocolat came out in this great canary yellow dress with a rainbow flag, which is one of the things which like made it in the first years not so liked in Bayreuth, but now it was great. And basically everyone left, and they were like, no, you're never gonna sing in Bayreuth again. And yeah, they were all like, yeah, cool, we're out, we're leaving now. And Le Gâteau Chocolat had like her pride flag, and she put it over the harp, and then they went off stage. By the way, I think one of the things that was also kind of mentioned in this was that Tannhäuser was abusive towards Elisabeth and also towards other persons. And this is also a reason why he had to leave Bayreuth beforehand, because he had a little bit of a fallout against the harpist. And at one point, Elisabeth in the first act, when she was like, oh, Tannhäuser's coming back, she was like, she showed her arms where like marks were. I was a bit far away, as I said, I was on the balcony, so I couldn't see it perfectly. And so this was the second act. They're again kind of expelled from Bayreuth. And the third act was, there's like the same VW that they had in the first act, but now it's run down. It's apparently very much later, and like just the dwarf is living there in this old van. And there was this huge poster, I think. This huge, I don't know, 10-story poster on stage, which I could not see. I know there was Le Gâteau Chocolat on it with like this really expensive bracelet or watch or something, which was to say like she also was part of the consumers now, so she's not an activist anymore, she's now part of the consumers, and the dwarf's all alone. And about this time I had to cough and I had to walk out. Yes, I'm telling you, it's really absurd. By the way, the other fun thing was the pilgrims that I talked about before. The pilgrims were basically us. It was the audience. There was the whole chorus of the Bayreuth Festspiele, went on stage like in their gowns, in their tuxedos, with like the book, or not that book, but like the book to the production under their arms, and they were like the pilgrims going to their kind of church, which is the Wagnerian festival house. And this was extremely funny, and I want to say this, and we're gonna get to this like in a few weeks. Tannhäuser was supposed to be the serious version of Meistersinger. Meistersinger later was kind of the comedic version of Tannhäuser. So Tannhäuser was this very serious, almost dark thing, and Meistersinger was this really fun thing. And to have Tannhäuser, the originally serious things, made so funnily was absolutely brilliant. And they say it's one of the best productions they ever had in Bayreuth, which I think Wagner himself would oppose to, but who cares? And it was really, really, really cool. Fortunately, I didn't see the whole thing. I know that in the end of it all, there was like a what could have been if Tannhäuser hadn't been abusive, if he hadn't gone away with Venus, how his life with Elisabeth would have looked. And this was also, again, this video. And I didn't see it, so I can't tell you what happened. I know that it was kind of like this thing where they went into the sun, where they're driving into the sun, or into the twilight or something. Don't know the English name, unfortunately, but it was supposed to be really beautiful, and my mom loved it completely. And I'm so sorry that this won't be on stage anymore, because I did not see it, and I'm so mad at myself. And as I said, I'm not used to the AC, and I had been like with those not opera gowns, but those evening gowns, which are like cut very low, which I'm not used to because I normally always wear a scarf, but in these videos and when I go singing. So immediately when I did wear one, I got immediately sick, and I'm really mad at myself. On the other hand, I'm kind of glad that it was that one, because I would have really hated it if it was any part of the ring. If I would have missed the third part or the third act of the Valkyrie or Siegfried or Götterdämmerung, or even like part of the third scene of Rheingold. I would have been really mad, and I'm so sorry to say this, but Tannhäuser was almost the best option. As I said, I'm sorry for that one. Tannhäuser is the one I like the least. I love this version, this production specifically. The opera per se is my least favorite. Out of all musical theatre works that Wagner made. And I'm gonna stand by this. And I'm gonna die on this hill. It's my personal least favorite. I can't tell you what my favorite is. I honestly can't. But yeah, this was kind of it. So I think this also was it for me today, because I've now filmed 4 videos and I'm done for personally. And probably, since I will upload this video specifically only tomorrow probably, or within the next days, I've got like a Hollister thing coming up yet again. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. And if you watched, or if you saw, I'm sorry, if you saw Tannhäuser, tell me what you think. And if not, then just listen to the overture. It's just beautiful. And this is it for today. So thank you very much and have a nice day. Bye.